Before you fall asleep tonight, ask yourself, what if the shadow in your room isn't just a shadow? What if it's waiting to move? Welcome to the spooky place, where sleep is never safe and nightmares begin with a story. The Whispering Room. The old inn creaked under the weight of the storm outside, its wooden bones groaning like a thing in pain. The traveler, a man named Elias Vane, had chosen this place only because the roads were flooded and the nearest town was miles away. The innkeeper, a gaunt figure with sunken eyes, had handed him a rusted key and uttered a single warning. Don't speak to anyone after midnight. Then, with a slow, knowing smile, he added, not even if they sound familiar. Elias laughed it off. Superstition, nothing more. But as the clock struck 12, the laughter died in his throat. At exactly 12:03 a.m., the whispers began. At first, they were faint, just a rustling in the walls like rats scurrying between the rotting beams. Then came the voice, soft, sweet, familiar. Elias. It sighed, curling around his name like a lover's touch. He froze. That voice, it was impossible. It sounded just like his sister, Lillian. But Lillian had been dead for 10 years. You never found out the truth, did you? The whisper taunted. About the fire. About why you were the only one who survived. Elias's breath hitched. The fire that had killed his family had been ruled an accident. But the way the voice hissed the words made his skin crawl. Then came the other voices. A child's giggle. A woman sobbing. A man screaming. No, begging. The walls trembled with them, the air thickening with the stench of smoke and something fouler. The whispers overlapped, a chorus of the dead, each one revealing secrets Elias was never meant to hear. You were chosen, Lillian's voice purred. The innkeeper knows. That's why he warned you. Because if you answer, we take you too. Elias clenched his fists, his heartbeat a wild drum in his chest. He knew he shouldn't respond, but the voice, her voice, was too real, too alive. And then, he made his fatal mistake. Lillian, he whispered back. Silence. Then laughter. Cold, cruel, not hers anymore. The walls split open, and a dozen skeletal hands shot out, grabbing him, dragging him into the darkness. The last thing Elias saw was the innkeeper standing in the doorway, shaking his head. Tisk, tisk, the old man sighed. I did warn him. And as the walls sealed shut, the whispers began again, waiting for the next guest to answer. Elias Vane's scream was swallowed whole by the inn's gaping walls, his body vanishing as if he had never existed. The innkeeper, a crooked smile twisting his lips, shuffled forward and pressed a withered hand against the peeling wallpaper. The whispers inside grew louder, hungrier, thanking him. Business had been slow lately, but the storm still raged outside, and soon enough, another desperate traveler would arrive. Another fool who wouldn't heed his warning. Another soul to feed the thing inside the walls. 3 nights later, a woman named Clara Hale stumbled into the inn, drenched and shivering. The innkeeper gave her the same key, the same warning. Don't speak to anyone after midnight. His milky eyes gleamed as he added, not even if they beg. Clara, a skeptic by nature, scoffed. But at 12:03 a.m., the whispers slithered into her room. Clara, her blood turned to ice. It was her brother's voice, the brother who had vanished on a hiking trip 5 years ago. They lied to you, the voice wept. I didn't get lost. I was taken. By him. By the innkeeper. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps. The walls pulsed, bulging inwards as if something were pressing against them from the other side. Then a wet, cracking sound. Fingers, blackened and rotting, pushed through the plaster. "Help me, Clara," her brother sobbed. "Just say my name. Just once." Tears streamed down her face. She wanted to scream, to run, but the voice was too real. To him, against all reason, her lips parted. Then she froze, because beneath her brother's voice, she heard something else. A chorus of other whispers, all repeating the same words in perfect unison. "A trap." Clara clenched her jaw shut. The room fell deathly silent. Then laughter. The walls rippled, flesh-like and grotesque, before splitting apart. A dozen twisted faces, some familiar, some monstrous, leered at her. The innkeeper's voice echoed from the hallway, giddy with madness. "Clever girl, but it doesn't matter. The house always gets fed." The last thing Clara saw was Elias Vane's hollow eyes staring back at her from the darkness, his mouth sewn shut with thick, black thread. And as the walls closed around her, the whispers began anew, waiting for the next guest. Static on the baby monitor. The baby monitor crackled to life again, slicing through the silence of night. Sarah's breath hitched as she lay frozen in bed, listening. At first, it had been faint, just garbled whispers, something she dismissed as radio interference or a neighbor's stray signal. But then, the voice grew clearer. A soft, lilting melody drifted through the speaker, a lullaby she had never sung, in a voice that was not her own. "Hush now, little one, the shadows are near." Her blood turned to ice. Sarah bolted upright, her heart hammering against her ribs. The nursery was just down the hall. She had checked on Emily an hour ago. Fast asleep, tiny fingers curled around her stuffed bunny. But now, the monitor showed nothing but darkness, the night vision feed flickering like a dying signal. And yet, the singing continued. "Close your eyes. Don't make a sound." She tore down the hallway, her bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood. The nursery door stood slightly ajar, though she always closed it. With a trembling hand, she pushed it open. The crib was empty. Emily was gone, but the crib still rocked gently, as if an invisible hand swayed it. The mobile above spun lazily, though no breeze touched it. Sarah's knees buckled as a choked sob escaped her throat. She stumbled forward, fingers digging into the crib's railing, and then she saw it. Scratches, deep, jagged marks clawed into the wood, as though something had dragged itself out from beneath. A wet, gurgling laugh echoed from the monitor, still clutched in her hand. Sarah turned it slowly, her reflection staring back at her in the blackened screen, except it wasn't her face grinning back. "Found you," the voice whispered, not through the monitor this time, but from right behind her. The door slammed shut, and then the screaming began. But here's the twist. Sarah never had a baby. Sarah's screams died in her throat as the thing behind her pressed closer, its breath cold and reeking of damp earth, slithering down her neck. She wanted to run, to fight, but her body refused to move, as if some unseen force had rooted her to the spot. The nursery walls seemed to pulse, the floral wallpaper peeling away to reveal something dark and glistening beneath, like wet flesh. The baby monitor screeched with static, then a voice, her own voice, giggled through the speaker. "You shouldn't have looked, Sarah." Her reflection in the monitor's screen twisted, the face melting like wax until it was no longer human, just a gaping maw of needle-thin teeth. The crib rocked faster now, the wood groaning under an invisible weight. And then, from the shadows beneath it, a hand emerged. Small, pale, a child's hand, but the fingers were too long. The nails were blackened and cracked, and as it dragged itself forward, Sarah finally remembered. The pregnancy test, The doctor's hushed words. There's no heartbeat. She had lost Emily months ago, but the thing in the nursery wasn't her daughter. It never had been. The last thing Sarah saw before the darkness swallowed her whole was the crib, now filled with writhing, squirming shadows, and the monitor flashing a single, impossible word in blood-red letters. Mine. The nursery wasn't real. Sarah had been strapped to a hospital bed the whole time, screaming about a baby that never existed. And on the heart rate monitor beside her, a tiny skeletal hand reached out from the static. The man under the bed. Emma had always laughed at superstitions, so when she found a yellowed note tucked beneath her new apartment's mattress, "Don't sleep with your feet uncovered," she smirked, crumpled it, and tossed it aside. Just some prank from the last tenant, she figured. That night, she sprawled across her bed, bare feet peeking out from the sheets, and drifted off without a second thought. Then, at 3:17 a.m., something touched her. A slow, icy brush against her toes, like skeletal fingers grazing her skin. Her eyes flew open, breath hitching. The room was silent. Dark. Too dark. She yanked her feet under the covers, pulse hammering. Just my imagination, she told herself. But then, a breath. Not hers. It came from beneath the bed. Emma froze. The air thickened, the scent of damp earth filling her nose. Something was down there. Something inhumanly patient. Her phone lay on the nightstand, just out of reach. If she moved, would it grab her? Then, scratch. Long nails dragged across the underside of the mattress, right beneath her spine. She screamed, bolting upright. The second her feet hit the floor, a hand shot out from under the bed, gray, withered, fingers too long, and seized her ankle. Emma kicked wildly, breaking free. She lunged for the door, but it slammed shut on its own. The lights flickered. The note she discarded now lay on the floor. The handwriting changed, fresh, jagged letters bleeding into the paper. Too late, and from the darkness beneath the bed, a wet, guttural voice whispered, "I can see your feet." The next morning, Emma's roommate found the apartment empty. Just the bed frame left, the mattress gone. Police discovered it days later in the building's basement, stained with decades of dry blood. And beneath it, dozens more notes, each in a different handwriting, all warning the same thing. Because the thing under the bed, it collects its victims. And Emma was just the latest. Emma didn't sleep for days after the attack. She moved her mattress to the floor, barricaded her door, and slept with thick socks and boots on. Anything to keep her feet hidden. But every night, no matter what she did, she heard it. Scratching, breathing, whispering her name. Her roommate, Jess, thought she was losing it. "You're freaking me out," Jess said, eyeing the salt lines Emma had poured around her bed. "It's just some dumb urban legend." But that night, Jess screamed. Emma burst into her room to find Jess dangling halfway off the bed, her legs dragged beneath it by something unseen. Emma grabbed her arms, pulling with all her strength, but Jess's grip was slipping. "It's got me," Jess shrieked before her body jerked violently. A sickening crack echoed through the room as her spine twisted unnaturally. Then, with one final yank, she was gone, swallowed whole beneath the bed. The room fell silent. Emma backed away, trembling. Then a wet crunching sound rose from below, followed by the slow, rhythmic drip, drip, drip of blood seeping through the mattress. She ran. The landlord refused to believe her. "Kids these days," he muttered, but Emma didn't care. She packed her bags, ready to flee, until she found another note slipped under her door. "You can't leave. You're part of the collection now." Her blood turned to ice. That night, she broke into the building's basement, flashlight shaking in her grip. The air was thick with the stench of rot, and then she saw them. Hundreds of mattresses, stacked floor to ceiling, each one stained black with old blood. At the center of the room stood a single bed frame, and beneath it, something moved. A figure, pale and emaciated, its limbs too long, its fingers too many, crawled out from the shadows. Its face was a grotesque patchwork of stitched-together skin, faces Emma recognized from missing persons posters. Jess's face was there too, her lips still fresh, her eyelids twitching. The creature smiled, its mouth splitting open like a wound. "You should have covered your feet," it rasped. Emma turned to run, but the basement door slammed shut behind her. The last thing she heard before the lights went out was the sound of something scurrying toward her, and the whisper of hundreds of voices, all chanting in unison. "Join us." A week later, a new tenant moved into Emma's old apartment. As she unpacked, she found a note under the mattress. "Don't sleep with your feet uncovered." She laughed, tossing it aside. That night, as she slept, her bare toes peeked out from the sheets, and beneath the bed, something stirred. A pale, skeletal hand reached up, and Emma's stitched-together face smiled in the darkness. The Crimson Visitor. The first time Thomas saw her, she was just a shadow at his bedroom door, a silhouette draped in a flowing red dress, her face obscured by the dim glow of the streetlight outside. He blinked, and she was gone. A trick of the light, he told himself. But the next night, she returned, closer this time, close enough for him to see the curve of her smile, too wide, too sharp. Night after night, she inched nearer. Thomas stopped sleeping. He chugged coffee, paced his apartment, blasted music, anything to keep his eyes open. But exhaustion always won, and the moment his eyelids fluttered shut, there she was. Then, one evening, as he sat trembling on his couch, fully awake, he felt it, the icy weight of a gaze. His breath hitched. Slowly, he turned. She stood in the corner of the room, watching, smiling. His screams brought the neighbors running. But when they burst in, she had vanished. "You're losing it, man," they said. But Thomas knew better. She was real, and she wasn't leaving. Then came the night she spoke. Thomas had barricaded himself in his bedroom, his back pressed against the headboard, his fingers white-knuckled around a baseball bat. The air grew thick, the temperature dropping until his breath came in ragged clouds. And then, a whisper right beside his ear, "Move over." His blood turned to ice. The mattress dipped as if someone had sat down beside him. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. A cold hand slid into his, fingers intertwining with his own. And then, laughter, soft, giddy. It wasn't coming from the woman. It was coming from under the bed. Thomas's heart stopped. The woman in the red dress wasn't a threat. She was a warning, because whatever was beneath him, whatever had been hiding there all along, was now crawling out. And it was hungry. The last thing Thomas saw before the darkness swallowed him whole was the woman's smile fading into something like pity. Then silence. The next tenant moved in a month later. On their first night, they swore they saw a figure in a red dress standing at the foot of their bed, smiling, waiting, and beneath the floorboards, something scratched. The new tenant, a young woman named Elise, didn't believe in ghosts. But on her third night in the apartment, she woke to the sound of fingernails dragging across wood. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the ceiling, paralyzed. Then a whisper, "You're in his spot." Elise bolted upright, her pulse hammering. The room was empty, but the air smelled like rust and damp earth, and the scratching it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from inside the walls. She called the landlord the next morning. He laughed. "You're the fifth person this year," he said. "They all say the same thing. Red dress, whispers, scratching. But it's just old pipes. Or rats." But Elise knew better. That night, she set up a camera. What she saw made her blood run cold. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the closet door creaked open. A pale hand emerged, fingers curling around the frame. Then, the woman in the red dress stepped out, her movements jerky, unnatural. She glided to the bed, her hollow eyes fixed on Elise. But she didn't stop there. She knelt, and with a grotesque crack of bone, she peered under the bed. Elise's scream died in her throat as the woman's head snapped up, her grin splitting her face ear to ear. "He's still here," she whispered. Then the camera cut to static. The next morning, Elise was gone. The only trace left was a single sentence scrawled in red on the bedroom wall. "We tried to warn you." The landlord, frustrated, finally called an exterminator. When the man pulled up the floorboards, he recoiled in horror. Beneath the foundation, packed in the dirt like gruesome seeds, were dozens of skeletons, all curled into fetal positions, their jaws stretched in silent screams. And at the very center, fresh and still glistening, was Elise. Her eyes were open, her lips were moving, and from the darkness beneath the bed, something answered. The exterminator fled. The building was condemned, but if you walked past it at night, you might see her, the woman in the red dress, standing in the window, waiting, smiling. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the scratching, because they're always looking for a new tenant. Last stop. The fluorescent lights above flickered like dying stars as Daniel jerked awake, his throat dry, his heart pounding. The subway car was empty, eerily so. No rustling newspapers, no murmured conversations, just the hollow hum of the train's engine. He rubbed his eyes, disoriented, and glanced out the grimy window. The station outside was unfamiliar, its name written in jagged, foreign script that seemed to shift when he stared too long. A cold sweat prickled his skin as the doors hissed open. No announcement, no passengers getting off, just silence. Stepping onto the platform, Daniel's shoes echoed too loudly in cavernous space. The air smelled stale, like old metal, and something else, something rotten. His breath hitched when he realized the shadows at the far end of the platform weren't just darkness. They were figures tall and impossibly thin, their elongated limbs twitching as they turned their heads, if they even had heads, toward him. The train doors slammed shut behind him. No, wait. He spun, banging on the glass, but the subway lurched forward, leaving him stranded. The lights inside the train flickered one last time before vanishing into the tunnel, plunging him into near darkness. Only the dim, sickly glow of the station signs remained, casting long, creeping shadows that slithered across the tiles. A whisper brushed against his ear, a language he didn't understand, couldn't understand. Yet it filled his mind with images of endless tunnels, of being buried alive beneath the city, of things with too many teeth waiting in the dark. Then, the shadows began to move. Daniel stumbled back, his pulse roaring in his ears. The signs above flickered again, and for a split second, the letters rearranged themselves into something he could read. Welcome to the last stop. And then the lights went out completely. Somewhere in the darkness, something giggled. The giggle echoed around him, high-pitched, childlike, but wrong, like a recording played backward. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps as he fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling. The screen flared to life. casting a pale blue glow over his face. No signal, of course, but the camera still worked. He raised it shakily toward the far end of the platform, where the shadows had been. The screen flickered, static distorting the image before resolving into clarity. Empty. A sigh of relief escaped his lips, until he heard the soft tap-tap-tap of footsteps behind him. Daniel whirled around, phone lights swinging wildly. Nothing, just the endless stretch of the platform, the peeling posters on the walls, advertising products he didn't recognize. Eat in bold, dripping letters. Sleep with a grinning, hollow-eyed face. Then, the whisper started, not from one direction, but from everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, even the ground beneath his feet. A chorus of voices, murmuring in that same impossible language, rising, overlapping, until it became a deafening chant. His skull throbbed, his vision blurred. Something warm trickled from his nose, blood. A shadow darted at the edge of his vision. He spun again, but it was faster, closer. The phone's light flickered, and for a split second, he saw them, crowding the platform, their elongated limbs twitching, their faces stretched into grotesque smiles, their eyes nothing but black pits. Then the light died. Darkness swallowed him whole. Cold fingers brushed his neck. Snap! The subway rattled through the tunnel, half empty at this late hour. A woman in a business suit glanced up from her phone, frowning. Had the train just stopped for a second? No, it must have been her imagination. She yawned, resting her head against the window. When she opened her eyes again, the train was slowing into a station she didn't recognize. The signs were in a language she couldn't read, and at the far end of the platform, shadows shifted. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe for more scary stories.